So we are going to go into some of these controversies about whether or not this picture down here is Lucy Mack Smith. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into some verified artwork of her from life. This is a picture by Sutcliffe Maudsley around 1842, and this is Lucy Mack Smith, which we're going to superimpose and morphologically compare, done by Frederick Piercy, who was done around, it was early 1850. She died in 1856, so like 1852, but as I looked at the route to Riverpool, they're talking about 1855, so I'm like, was it within a year of her death? Either way, very, very close to the end of her death. He sits down and sketches some pictures of her, of Joseph Smith III and David Hiram, and a really good artist who was commissioned by Brigham Young just to sketch the monuments and everything. And I don't know if you'd say monuments, but like landmarks as they're traveling from England to Salt Lake City in the early 1850s. So this book was to help those that were immigrants coming across the U.S. and they'd figured out the safest trail to take, and then by this point it was a well-established trail. So we have this, and then we have this painting. So I want you to kind of look at this. I've tilted it up because she's hunched really far forward because she's older. And this is by Maudsley. It's a painting. It's really small, but there's a lot of detail. You can see a lot of detail to her hair that's very gray looking. And I want you to notice that her nose. So there's the edge of her her nostril, and there's the tip of her nose. So the cartilage shape, the tip of her nose is just higher than the average person. Whereas the woman in this picture, the tip of her nose is extremely long, and her hair looks black. But when we look at Lucy in the early 1840s, her hair is really gray, white. So that doesn't quite make a lot of sense at all. And then as we're looking at, I sort of pulled up that picture of Emma. I'm like, what, Emma? Yeah, Emma's not who's in that picture. I mean, there's pictures of her elderly, but still her nose is small, and she does not have a long, even though she's older. Not everyone ends up with that long nose. You can still see her nostrils, right? Emma she had a smaller nose. She's not the lady. She's not this lady. They are not the same person at all. I do wonder if it's George Albert Smith's wife, which I'll just kind of show you after I analyze this Lucy Mack Smith picture. Let's see. We can adjust the opacity and just go up and down, and you can see how visible her nostrils are, right? Because the tip of her nose is higher. Yes, your nose continues to grow, but even President Monson, he had a very long nose when he was the prophet of the Church of Christ Latter-day Saints. But when he was in his 20s, guess what? He also had a really long nose. It was sort of established, your face is it's you in your 20s, unless there's major injury, major sun damage, or anything like that. But back in the day, they often covered their face very well. So, I mean, and she grew up sort of near, most of your sun damage happens before you're 18, and she grew up basically on the border of Canada. So in Vermont, I think is where both, at least the father and the mother, I think that's where they met. So got married. It's just not the same person. The nose is 100% different. And the eyes do not look black. I mean, again, there's no color. This is black and white. This is black and white, but still the shading, totally different. This is not Lucy Mack Smith at all. However, I looked up Zilpha, started going through some of the Smith family members, who was a wife of George Albert Smith, and just even when she was younger, you can see She has a much longer, you see the cartilage of her nose. But her nostrils are quite still pretty visible, but still she has a very, very long nose. So, in her mouth shape. So as you get older, a lot of times your eyes just start to hollow out. But she seems to have the darker eyes, darker hair. That's the closest I could find, just going through the family tree really quick and trying to see who could this actually be, what other, because it was just a carte de visite that had a picture of this woman that, and even this quality, it looks almost like Xeroxed. Not a great quality picture there. So ultimately, and so clearly this was run through a program that added sometimes in this slide here that is being declared this. Oh, so this is Lucy Mack Smith, this is Joseph Smith, and this is Fred Smith. Well, I think all three of these are wrong. Obviously, I've talked about this on theprophetscars.com, and then I'll be changing some things around probably today or tomorrow. But this is, it even added really strange things that are just, yeah. Those computer programs are not always super smart. And so this is who I'd concluded last summer was in that daguerreotype. But we can go ahead and just do a quick comparison with Fred. All right, so there's Fred. It seems like they have this left eyebrow that's arched, and they have this longer hair. To zoom out a little bit, it's a little bit difficult to see the hairline because it's oxidized. Right there is where it's oxidizing on this picture. So it's not in great shape at all. So this is not the background. This is where it's turning black. And so it's oxidizing down the forehead, but there is no indication that I can see of him having this very distinctive, this is an 1860s picture, right? This is later than this picture. How could the hairline change that much and go from being a lot higher to a lot lower? So you can see that this hairline's up much higher. Fred's hairline is a lot lower. And so this is undisputed because Julie Murdoch Smith wrote on this carte de visite. It also has that double gold edging as Emma Smith's 1860s copy of her 1845 daguerreotype as my 1860s copy of a daguerreotype according to Gowan Weaver, because it doesn't look like J.S. Bibbin's work. It's a copy of a daguerreotype. 100%. We've looked at Bibbin's work. It's not his original studio photography. It's his taking his good studio camera, setting a daguerreotype on an object, and photographing it. And they were pros. They figured out how to, but even holding a daguerreotype, I'm like, how could you get a straight on shot and have good lighting? And it's hard. They were very, very, very shiny. But other major differences between this verified picture of Fred Smith. Again, the height of the eyebrows. Look how high up his eyebrows are. So just stare at this, his left eyebrow, that guy's eyebrow. Totally different. You see a lot of skin. It just almost looks manicured. Whereas his eyebrows are very, very heavy and bushy and just almost into his eyes. But I can see how they think that eye shape is similar. It's very, very similar. But I just see a little bit more bright-eyed, but also just sad expression in there. But they're not 100% the same. I can see how they think that left eye looks similar, but I think Fred's eyes are just a little bit more open. But where we get to super major differences are the nose. So the bridge of his nose is just, it's just softer. He doesn't have a Roman nose at all. There's a guy in this daguerreotype. You can see the bridge in it nose. You see that shadow changes really dark right there. You can see this bump. He's got a bump on his nose. He's got a bigger nose. I do not see any indication of a bump or a protruding large Roman nose. Fred doesn't have a large Roman nose. And then the nasal tip is so low that you can hardly see nostrils, kind of like with that Lucy Mack Smith picture. Alleged Lucy Mack Smith picture that isn't Lucy. I mean, it could have been one of George Albert Smith's wives, you know, carte de visite picture. I'd have to see all their whole story there, but it doesn't add up. The nose is 100% different. It is so different. I think Fred's nose is wider, but it just, you can see his nostrils very well. It really almost looks, it kind of looks like half of Utah now that I'm looking at his nose. A lot of Utahns have sort of this smaller nose and their nasal tip is very high. And so I almost think of the Osmonds. Like, a lot of Utahns look like the Osmonds. How interesting. Pretty big family, but they're just the famous Donnie Osmond nose. But yeah, just a pretty small nose. But you can see like how the tip of his nose is just a lot higher. So a lot of Utahns don't, you see a lot of people that just look like Donnie Osmond. I'm not trying to imply that he did anything bad, but this is William Pierce. So when I found a picture of William Pierce, and what I did was take this daguerreotype. I read through the Ensign Peak article, Rare Discovery, last summer, and I wasn't going to touch this. I could see some differences, but I never sat down and analyzed them until last year. And I had his picture on my website because everything I read, they're like, it's 100%. It's been ID'd 100% as Fred. I'm like, I don't know, maybe, sure, whatever. And I just kind of went with it. I did go with it. But then I just felt like I needed to look at it and really know. And I was like, there's no way. So just looking at that, I mean, sorry, we didn't finish going down the face. The lip shape, see how rounded and how, you know, this side of his upper lip, it's just thicker. His upper lip is thicker on the verified picture of Fred, and his bottom lip is much more rounded than the man in this picture. So you see how round and thick his bottom lip is, and his upper lip. So his bottom and upper lip are both thicker. We can zoom in because we can see that really well. So you see that bottom lip shaped so differently. And just look at this side of his face. Like, his jaw looks like it's angling to his left or right, whereas Fred's jaw is just very symmetrical and very, very square. He's a very strong jawline. So the jaw is a different shape, much wider right there and right there. But we lined up the eyes, nose, and mouth. And his chin is much longer and it's pointy. Whereas this guy doesn't have a pointy chin. It's much more flat. But yeah, I imagine if a Xeroxed copy of it, I don't know what quality they were looking at initially, but so we're taking that away and then flip it around. So I reversed it and found him because I read this whole thing. I read the whole thing, and then I looked at cord was in my way, so I'm trying to type. So I sold it for a lot. There you go, auction. This is where you can see the much higher quality of this picture. You can see it's colorized, really high DPI there. Okay, so sold. Estimate 10 to 15. Oh, okay, so sold for $8,000. Why did I think it was 18,000? So they talked them down. But here they explain and tell this whole story that the provenance, okay, consigned by descent of Hiram Smith. And then they start talking about John going in 1860. Well, Fred wasn't dead at this time. He wouldn't die for another 2 years. They were close. And then John's return to Utah, he would have given the daguerreotype of his sister, who had been born the same year as Fred, for would have been passed to her daughter, and So cousins would have been closest children before the migration. But it doesn't make, I mean, just as far as this whole theory, when in reality, these children of Hiram Smith were screaming at David Hiram and Alex, saying there are pictures of their father that they are not sharing a painting. And then you read the letters of David Hiram. He's like, yeah, there's a painting of Hiram Smith that they're upset about. They want to have. And that's in 1869. And around that time shows up in 1860s carte de visite of a forward-facing painting of Hiram Smith. And David says it's a Head and Shoulders painting. So anyway, they're going to give over a picture of someone who's their direct, immediate family member, but not give up pictures of Hiram to them. But apparently in the 1850s, some pictures, some likenesses burned in a fire. So then Joseph F. is wanting, well, he's lost his pictures of apparently his uncle and his father and Brigham Young. There's apparently a daguerrean likeness of all three of them, which is interesting, but it was destroyed while he was in Hawaii on his mission, which is really sad, but we're not going into all that right now. Full account of the discovery. So Talbot is the one who sold it, not stole it. Anyway, let me see here. So as we go through, let me scan it really quick here. Positively identified in 2000 as Fred Smith by Ronald Romig, an assessment second by Denominations Historic Sites Coordinator Lachlan Mackay, and by artist DJ Bodden. So Loch Mackay ID'd it as Fred, and Ronald Romig ID'd it as Fred, and so did DJ Bodden, apparently. So these three people, one of them is an artist. So it's really DJ Bodden that is the one that really ID'd this. I guess this is Frederick Smith. But it, it's 2001. And then here's this picture. And so you can see, I think last summer I had this quality version. And we have a higher quality of that. I don't know why I didn't see that last summer. So we just flipped it around, and now the arched eyebrow is his right eyebrow. And so William Pierce, I'll show you how he's related to this man, Talbot. There's Robert D. Talbot that wrote all this. Here's his family line going back to Jerusha, and Jerusha is the daughter of Hiram Smith. And you can see here's William Pierce with Jerusha. He looks like the guy in the daguerreotype. He just really does. And so there's her family line. So she married this guy. So I went through and looked at all of Hiram Smith's sons. I'm like, no, John, no, they're not this guy. And then I went back to Jerusha, who was born the same year as Frederick. I don't know why it's written like that. It's a little confusing there, but they are just cousins. So then her daughter, Hannah Pierce Beckstand, married, and then she became a Johnson, Elmira, and so it's being passed through the women. And then Hazel Johnson married a Howard, and then Janice, the daughter of Lola, married a Talbot, and that's how you end up with Robert D. Talbot. So, yep. So looking at Jerusha, and I just looked at her husband's picture and went, wait a minute, who's this guy? And I'd been staring at this daguerreotype, already recorded a video. I'm like, that's it. That's who this is. So when you superimpose them, let's get the higher DPI version. And so I'll show you that other one. He's just not facing forward, so he's making an odd expression and his head's down. That younger one, he has that heavier eyebrows, but just looking at the eyes, the expression, the eyes are the window to the soul. And this is the same person. This is just someone who's a lot older and been through a lot, living in, Utah, but he's got this nose that angles to his left, and his mouth is angled more towards his left or right, like it's asymmetrical. His nose is not very symmetrical, and a longer nose. So as you get older, yes, your nose grows, but still, like President Monson, your nose kind of stays the same. You may not hear me that well as I'm typing, but Thomas S. Monson, anyway. I mean, even as a kid, he had a longer nose. So there's the tip of his nose, a lot longer. So it did grow as he got older and older, to the point where he just, you can't see his nostrils at all. That's just how it looks, but it was always that way. So it got a little bit longer, but still, if you have a nose like Fred, or even if you go to the own article, and this isn't Talbot's fault, and I don't know, it was 2001, so people, 2003, 2005 is when I had seen and took a class by Leon Parson, and how he ended up doing this picture of the first vision was really using Photoshop to create the ideal backdrop. So he took pictures of animals and different things, and he transported them where he wanted them to be, and just did all this stuff in Photoshop. Then he got the perfect picture of sort of someone walking through the woods and just happening to see Joseph a little bit smaller in the background. So it's a really great painting. But anyway, really low DPI picture, but here he is as a child by Sutcliffe Maudsley. Here's Fred. You can see that strong jawline. You see that nose. It just, I don't know if you'd say it's a small nose, but he doesn't have a Roman nose, and it's much more flat along the bridge and between the eyes, and then the tip of his nose is higher. You can see it even as a child. So I'll see if there's a higher, I know there's a higher quality of one other. With his brothers and Major Bideman. See, there's Ensign Peak, all of that. Yeah, that's just... And if you want to find pictures that sort of look the same as some of these, and now there's Joseph F. Smith, and there's Frederick Granger Williams, so they're just going off of, what are you looking at? What are you really looking for? Oh wow, there's a higher quality. So there's a much higher quality of that artwork of Fred Smith. Yeah, so it's been misidentified. So 2, well 3, because that picture of... Yeah, but here's Parley P. Pratt. He's kind of got a similar nose as a lot of Utahns, but this guy has a longer nose. And it's not like a monster nose, but still, it's just... So my morphological comparison is a lot more superior. You can see, you're looking at all the shadows and comparing them and seeing how much is the face changing as you're morphing them together. And if they change a lot, it's easier to see those major differences. And you see those major differences, you're just like, they're not the same person, you move on. Right? So that's sort of what Teague and Amachi Annenberger did, but they did that for months. From about January 2019 to late March 2019. And they had studied my picture separately, didn't talk to each other, and they knew I had a website. Like, we're not going to look at our website. So Machi didn't look at it. Tegan probably did for a second, but they analyzed it in slightly different ways and then came together. And they're like, this is the same person. So, and they told me I had the only authentic photograph of Joseph Smith. So that picture is February, 1909. So from like, I don't know, 1856 to, or 53 or whatever. And did I already say this? This is who I really wonder if is actually, because she married George Albert Smith. And so she would have been a Mrs. Smith. And she had, she had children with him. There aren't a ton of pictures of her, but she's young. If we look at that, she has sort of a longer nose. It's possible. I don't know, or that could have been her grandmother. I really don't know. But yeah, this is not Joseph Smith, and it's just kind of funny to look at what some odd things going on with that picture. You can see quite a bit of differences between that and this. But yeah, looking at pictures of Fred and his brothers, I think there's just that picture. It's just really low quality right there. And I've seen it in the memoirs of President Joseph Smith III, and it's not necessarily that much better is what they have in there. So, because that looks like it possibly also was like a daguerreotype. So, anyway, that's just all I have for you guys today. And yeah, any other longer form videos that just have to do with my photograph or anything I've found out, I'm going to continue to put that on Patreon. But I thought I'd go ahead and just share this since it's been, I think it's been a year. Has it been a year since I've analyzed? Yeah, it definitely has been, because someone got a little bit mad at me, I think, because of this. And all the other stuff I found out about the Larson daguerreotype. Which, it just, unless Joseph Smith got like a perm nose job, his eyebrows were burned off in a fire, hair plugs, an entire facial reconstruction, which they had to do to his death mask to make it match that picture, it's just not Joseph Smith. It's just not. This is not Fred. That picture's not Lucy. So it's just kind of sad. It's frustrating. I think I think I sound mad when I'm not, because I just know so many facts about the painting, and I know what's said in letters, and other people are out there with the microphone and getting thousands of likes and views that are saying completely historically wrong things, even about the forward-facing painting. And I'm just very passionate. I'm like, well, here's this source, here's that source, and there people are like, oh, I must yell at you now. It's like I've been really interrogated and asked about all this artwork and everything, and in 2019 I knew nothing, but by 2021, 2 years in of talking to Tegan Amachi and really needing to be up on my game, because anyone I talked to in Utah wasn't going to help me. And it's just kind of sad. I mean, initially people were really nice before the Larson daguerreotype came out, and I would just ask questions and just talk about different pictures that were old on my Instagram page, which I've deactivated, but it's still in existence. But people initially were very nice, and a lot of people thought I was a guy. Like, hey dude, bro, and they would send me such nice messages when they thought I was a guy. When they found out I was a girl, I was like, oh, do you really know anything? Can a girl know anything? Anyway, but yes, there's been some nice people, there's been some really not nice people. Yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Have a good day.